Okay, we welcome you to another episode of Learning Stories. This is a show where we profile a diverse set of learners from the 21st century. In each episode of this show, we interview and chat with a guest who has a story to share about how they acquired a set of unique skills and knowledge in a creative and innovative manner. In the process, we hope to uncover a new understanding of learning as conceptualized, imagined, and narrated by the guest in our show. Today's guest is Kiran Reddy. He's someone I've always admired for his ability to think about problems, using a systems approach, and also to think about the world around him in a very strategic manner. A little bit about Kiran before we jump into the conversation. Kiran is a big proponent of pursuing voluntary, nonprofit, and for-profit engagements in parallel. He completed a law degree from the Symbiosis Law School in Pune from 2008 to 2013. He then began his career, and for the last 8 years, he has worked in the leadership development and grassroots capacity building space. He's worked with several organizations in this period, and we were fortunate to work together on some of these projects. And very early on with Students for Liberty, we had a close association there. But some of the organizations he's closely worked with are, and also created and co-founded, are Helm of Eight, Rise with Ties, Lens Plate, Catalyst 2030, which is more of an initiative, the Head Start Network, Startup Grind. Currently, he's the founder and CEO of Helm of Eight, which works to empower purpose driven individuals, organizations, and collectives across domains to enhance their impact potential. So there's a lot to unpack there. I basically summarized 10 to 13 years of Kiran's work in the social impact space and in just a couple of lines. So, Kiran, in this particular talk, like apart from your ability to do systems thinking and strategic decisions and stuff like that, I think I've always admired your personality as a learner. You've always been curious. And I think some of our early conversations were about books and, philosophy. And I think you were also part of a small group we had in Bombay where a couple of us would meet up and chat about different things. And there was a little Algonquin round table. But, you know, like before we jump into your projects and your education, I wanted to start off with maybe giving you some time to talk about who Kiran was like, what Kiran was like before all of this started. The Kiran growing up in Bombay, a young boy. What were some of the things you were curious about? And yeah, we want to understand what you were like as a young person leading into university, and what were some of the things that you know uh, that you wanted to always explore and know more about.
Mm, that's a loaded question because I think like when it comes to when did the bulb go on, it was like after college.
Mm-hmm.
So till then, there was a lot of what do you say, me reacting to my reality through my whatever association by birth, by school, by friends, by lack of social emotional learning, and what all that entails when life faces conflict, right? Like there's no like safe space is something I found as an adult
Hmm.
and not so much as a child.
Hmm.
So what does that does to me? I actually ended up that by the time I became aware enough to look after myself and to kind of unlearn, relearn, and this whole paradigm. You could say, like, by the time I became strong enough to look after myself, right, and be self sufficient in that sense, I was filled with a lot of anger um, that something, somewhere, somehow let me down.
Hmm.
But what that gave me in return is an unparalleled drive because I personally faced that in
Hmm.
my childhood. Not to say my childhood was ridden with that. It's just that there is a version of me that was extremely joyful, could light up a space, like you could just plug in and play a party, like that kind of a youthful energy, which
Hmm.
came out during play. But the moment that got done, when you go outside of play, um, that part was not fun.
Hmm.
Uh, Books were an escape at that point, I'd say. Um, it kind of was like, honestly, like before I had this awareness, I was reading so much about self-worth. And now that like there is awareness and there are tools and there is practice and there's so much more, that has become more curated. That's become a little more defined. But I used to read a lot more of Tati, as I call it, growing up, because it was all like, really easy. Like if you say Robin Sharma gave me enlightenment, then like, there's something wrong with either my understanding of Robin Sharma or that word enlightenment,
Hmm.
because it's not something that like learning is not just restricted to one space.
Mm-hmm.
And for that, the only way is self-awareness.
Yep. And yeah, and
That entails, because that's the only thing in your control, right?
yeah, that's very powerful, Kiran. I think realizing that there are certain things that didn't work for you at a young age and trying to, fix those things is also a very important part of growing up and understanding your identity. Because I think at the core of, what you want to do eventually and what you want to learn is also that self identity that is constantly evolving from a very young age. Like I'm thinking about the influence of your parents and your teachers at that point. Like what did your parents do, and was there a subject or a teacher at school that piqued your interest in some sort of way, or you felt like that was some different in a positive way, if I could say
See, the
that.
problem is that like I can not problem, but the situation is that in retrospect, you can see this. But
Mm.
while coming up, while doing it, this was not an awareness that I carried. So it's not necessarily fair assessment that this was the way Kiran went,
Mm.
because the way Kiran went was in default, was
Mm.
in reaction to stimulus. And you could say fate and luck and whatever you want to call it. I ended up where I was. And at the end, it's basically destiny's hand, right?
Mm.
That shaped where I went and who I met and how I stayed connected and what influenced me. I was actually very fascinated by philosophy, but can you believe it? Before I went to law school, I didn't know that what liberal arts was.
Mm.
Like my 11th and 12th was science, despite having scored really low in science. I was actually meant to be in the arts or maybe even commerce for that matter.
Mm.
The degree I chose was legal and uh, business, right? Like BBLLB. But the reason why I ended up actually managing to get into law was because my uncle said, "You love arguing, so you should go to law." Right? I mean, there's no grand design like of
Yeah.
like engineering your life. I mean, there are people who do that. I've met them and I think they're prodigies and they're great. I'm not that.
Mm.
I'm not the academic benchmark ideal student. I'm more of the renegade, aloof, the one who decided to move away from the herd.
Yeah.
If you say that what is the norm, um, I have deviated considerably from the norm the moment I got my freedom back after education.
Mm.
Because I had never exercised that freedom or choice in a realistic manner. But law was where I felt the most connected with my
Interesting.
subject areas. But it happened not by my own design, it happened by a fluke, the matka, as we call it.
But then what were those 5 years like, Kiran? Like, like I mean, at a personal level, what did learning law teach you about being human? And that's and how did that influence your thinking and decision making right after? But
It's
what were
a
those 5 years like for you?
it was what I got exposed to in life outside of law school. I don't think that those books can really give you the awareness that you seek in terms of how do you apply yourself in the real world.
Hmm.
And it's not those internships that really like with corporate law firms, because typically the university I went to caters to corporate law
Hmm.
and not to systems change,
Hmm.
not to entrepreneurship, not to questioning the system.
Hmm.
Maybe to some extent in litigation, some people have done some good work, some went to international law, but the college is a platform.
Hmm.
Um, it's unfair to blame the college in any way. It's unfair to blame the student alone in any way. It's the way this engagement is designed, right?
Yep.
Um, and it's the way the system is placed.
Hmm.
I discovered these in my extracurriculars. It was all the optional stuff that I was more interested in. Like what was primary for me was actually what was optional for many
And
people.
what were some of
Because
these optional things?
like debates, I think I really enjoyed debates. I really enjoyed munning. I really enjoyed extempore. I enjoyed public speaking platform opportunities. Um, I enjoyed um, applying for challenges or competitions, doing treasure hunts, being curious, this kind of stuff. I was interested without knowing I was how deeply interested that I was like my college didn't afford me to go to civil society in Pune. Pune as a like my love story. Right now I'm in Pune. I'm like uh, 2 kilometers from where my college was, where I was 5 years. But when I left law school, I wanted to run the away from Pune, like get to the furthest away, and like I went back to Mumbai.
Hmm.
Now, funnily, life has reconnected me back to Pune through the work that I'm doing,
Yeah.
which we'll have some opportunity to get into.
Yeah.
And I really discovered Pune for the first time.
Hmm.
Like the depth of Pune, the Maratha intelligentsia, the culture, the connect with nature, the kind of social development work that Pune accelerates for Maharashtra.
Hmm.
Right? You can say Mumbai finances things, but Pune actually is a hotbed of the heart of Maharashtra, the
Hmm.
Maratha entrepreneurs, the Maratha intelligentsia. And yeah, like, I mean, this was not something I was exposed to in law school,
Hmm.
even though the institution has that. Because there's no access in this platform, or rather, my own interest. Like, I had no awareness, right? Like, how can, when you're going through the system, you have like 2 years of opportunities. But if you don't hold the awareness in that system of what and how you can leverage that system,
Hmm. You
what's the
don't
point?
really. Yep. Yeah. And, I like, because I've observed you over the years, Kiran, I've known you for what, like, I think a little less than a decade now. I think 2013, 2014 was probably when we met. And that was probably an interesting phase in your life and in my life as well. Both of us were figuring things out. And, you know,
Back when you had glasses.
when I had, yeah, that's so long back in the day. And I'm just curious about, Kiran, what were those first years out of university like for you, and what were you seeking in terms of information, knowledge, mentors, and professional opportunities? As a law graduate, because I know very early on you were mindful of this notion of not only thinking about business opportunities in a very capitalistic sense. You were very holistic in terms of understanding how business and social impact intersect at a point, and how you can use business to actually push forward social goals. And I know a lot of your work currently with the Catalyst Foundation is related to the UN SDG goals. And I know Helm of Eight is also doing some wonderful work with various organizations on the ground. But right out of university, what was Kiran sort of looking for, and how did that thinking around um, social impact develop there with those first professional engagements, and also policy for that matter? Because I know the
Right,
Center for Civil Society and Students for Liberty were other organizations in your life at that point. So
right. So I think I was in my final year of law school, just wrapping up my fifth year, ninth, 10th semester. November, I came across this public policy leadership program, and I've
mhm.
not really attended too much of that. And I showed up. It was in Bombay, and it was an eye opener. It was kind of like a schooling of the caveman. I was a hard left guy, like I was hard socialist.
Mhm.
Like my heart went out for like inequality, status, and like the kind of privileges that exist, and like being conscious of privilege. This was that kind of space. And here comes an organization that says that this is a design problem.
Hmm.
And this is a stakeholder analysis. Like that word, stakeholder analysis, given my also predisposition to mind in predisposition to each other, right?
Wow. Hmm.
Machines have to be taught that by
Hmm.
a human being, have to be programmed that by a human being. But you're talking about awareness, about situational awareness, physical awareness, like, your emotional awareness, your
Hmm.
intellectual prowess, and how far your intellect has progressed, and awareness of what you don't know, like, the known unknown. What do you say? It's like basically this is known, this is known unknown. Then there is the known known unknown, and then unknown unknown. The unknown unknown paradigm, that what I'm completely in my blind side,
Hmm.
is the challenge.
Hmm.
Ignorance is like the ocean, and knowledge is like a boat,
Hmm.
right? If you think the boat is the ocean, then there's a problem,
Hmm.
because that's arrogance, right? And the 20s is when you'll face this surge of, like, main hu, I want to assert myself, I want recognition, I want validation, I want, like, an opportunity to test and prove myself. That was 20s. Teens
Hmm.
was like, hormonal locha, like, just don't judge yourself when you were a teen. I think it does shape like how you become as an adult. I think just un unknowingly, knowingly, toxic or positive habits you may pick up, depending on which side of the balance you come out on. It's
Hmm.
better to spend some time introspecting. So I was introspecting when I was coming out of that. And I wanted something that gave me freedom,
Hmm.
agency.
Hmm.
I didn't have agency in college.
Got it.
Whatever agency I was exercising was in revolt or rebellion, or in kind of offshooting from college ka ye hai na. I have to give these exams and achieve these marks and have this much attendance. I'll game this system, and I will go ahead and I will pursue all my extracurriculars while I'm dancing between term not granted and between 16, 18 exams every semester.
Wow. Hmm.
It was a dance. I think, like, it basically, I was like, I don't want to lose a year.
Hmm.
And there was this entire limit that you have. And I was literally on the limit every year as I transitioned. And it really just, like, shifted my perspective, that I wanted to leverage my position in that
Hmm.
model. And that's where I pushed myself to explore. 2010 was when I went to London for 2 months. I went
Hmm.
to a summer school. I got exposed to international law. I came back and I realized that I can't pursue international law. What it did teach me was that the moment you have a camera na,
Hmm.
to an Indian politician's face, and that camera is like a BBC or, like, an international media agency, they have to behave themselves.
Hmm.
They have to speak a different tone. When you
Yeah.
have a domestic camera, they will speak a different tone. And then it's so on and progresses. But, like, it's basically civil society is like you are being oppressed by the system in your location, but there are other people in other parts, और लोग क्या कहेंगे वाला जो pressure बनता है, what pressure that creates, or what will people say,
Hmm.
or what will people think, is a very powerful tool.
And that's what you
So
figured out
that
from
that's what
international.
I learned in 2010. That's what
Hmm.
I learned in 2010. And that was also the first time I was asked for my opinion. Now, I'm not saying every education institution is like the one that I think there are many conscious models that I have discovered
Hmm.
growing up, that, like, I wish I had gone to school here, college here, university here, did these things. But I know it now because I've become aware of the whole system.
Hmm.
But before, like, alternative models,
Hmm.
positive boarding experiences, different kinds of pedagogies and methodologies, and,
Hmm.
like, place where emphasis was given to social emotional learning over academic arithmetic, geography, and language, and just, like, basic stuff,
Yeah,
foundational stuff.
like that's an interesting tangent to, go down, Kiran, like in terms of those pedagogies, because I know at that point in your life, you were really exploring alternate ways to educate yourself and about different disciplines. You were interested in politics and psychology, in human resource development. So how did you design your learning environment for yourself without those restrictions of the formal system? Like what were some of the, I know internships and fellowships are something that you have really taken, made good use of. You've done some fellowships over the years, but what are some other
Not
alternate?
really.
No, Kiran?
Like, even that's the thing. Like, I think I've crafted my own fellowship experience.
And what does
I've
that entail?
crafted my own path. So, I mean, it basically means showing up into a reality,
Hmm.
being an observer, taking some skill set that you have. My skill set now, when I graduated, it was 2013.
Yep.
I had by this time gotten exposed to public policy and leadership and some amount of this civil society. The only internships I did was the nonprofit ones. I did because my course demanded that I go do a corporate internship. So I went and I spent a month there.
Hmm.
It's more in the chai sutta lounge and like having, bakwas conversation.
Hmm.
Um, I mean, that's the quality, right? Like when you say internship, you expect a certain standard, but we all have different vocabulary, understanding, experiences of those words,
Yeah.
right? So in 2013, when SFL I got introduced to at a conference, I saw it as an opportunity which could run in parallel to my life. It would have been great to have SFL in college, but I discovered it as I was leaving college, and they were okay with me being a youth leader instead of a student leader.
Got it. And just for the
And I could,
viewers that don't know what
yeah,
SFL is, Kiran, could you like give them a
sorry.
brief like
So
description
So
of that?
Students for Liberty is this organization based out of Washington, D.C. that provides a platform for students to engage an alternative thought process to the mainstream. Now, everyone has heard of the value system of being liberal,
Hmm.
right? So liberal comes from the word liberty, and liberty is directly linked with freedom
Hmm.
and, in my opinion, responsibility.
Hmm.
And your entire co-relationship, your civic relationship, you did not sign the constitution, but you're bound by the land in which you're born to the
Hmm.
laws of the land and the system, right? You expect a certain thing from the system, and the system expects you to perform a certain role, and there is taxation.
Hmm.
This responsibility is very shittily managed
Hmm.
through your childhood because you are a dependent.
True.
So once you start gaining that awareness, why should I be restricted in terms of what I can do in my life by an external entity?
Hmm.
So
Yeah.
this is the fundamental political science and philosophical base of where law comes from. Like, I mean, there is the divine right, and like, how humankind went from being hunters gatherers to feudal societies to now, uh, I don't even know what to call us. Uh, it's a scary diversity, scary amount of diversity, not a scary divergence. But like today, what are we? We are in post growth.
Hmm.
Like today, the future is already here, just disproportionately distributed,
Hmm.
right? So in 2013, the moment I had my freedom, I looked at Students for Liberty as an ideological base that if you want to do some good, you need to know why.
True.
Why should I care about the planet? Why should I care about my fellow human being?
Hmm.
And that's where the Students for Liberty ideology base kind of helped me, because socialism was welfare, but it's like welfare at the cost of your future.
Interesting.
You're
Hmm.
borrowing from your future, spending it today.
Yep.
That's economics, but economics exists with politics. So political economics, and political economists typically in mainstream speak of left and right.
Hmm.
Are you economically uh, free to do what you want? Are you socially free to do what you want? So the liberal viewpoint was kind of the north, the ultimate freedom. And towards the top of that is evolved anarchy, right? So that's a theoretically beautiful journey to go through. But practically, you will see all your change makers are liberals. Those who stood up for other people's rights are people who had liberal views, people who would respect your right to speak, even if they didn't agree with you.
Got it.
The spirit of debate and discussion happens here. Today, you have an ultra right fascism
Yep.
and an ultra left Naxalism, and your Dalit movement or oppressed basically galvanizing for their rights. And here you have religion churning the engines, and different countries are like basically these levers are pulling you apart using social media.
Yeah.
So SFL was this base where students could explore a safe space to discuss ideas, to discuss how society is, to discuss what economics is, and your worldviews were shaped in a way. But again, it was limited to physical reality. Philosophy, political science, both with regards to that, and to some extent, personal philosophy that comes from it, but spiritually agnostic or atheist. And I was a spiritual guy. So in parallel, my voluntary work with Students for Liberty started becoming non-profit work with Students for Liberty. But they gave me a badge that allowed me to go engage with anyone with an identity. And that was the first time I was leveraging a title or an identity. I mean, I've been in leadership positions in school, like, monitor or like, house cap. I've had that streak of leadership, which got further enhanced. And I was now going into university and learning environments and engaging with students on these ideas, learning it myself and then talking it to them.
Yep.
And that's where my activism started, being more canvassed and explored, because I felt that if you really want to make a difference, there needs to be a political ideology that is different and which is also represented on the ballot. But socialism is written into your constitution.
Yep.
Right.
I mean, you did a great job explaining the spectrum of political ideologies, Kiran, just in terms of that window. And I think a lot of young people are also struggling or, exploring that identity politically. And it's really important to educate yourself, but also engage in positive discussion and debate about these different points of views, and I think that is something that came naturally to your personality, but it also benefited you in the sense that you were always able to understand how different people had these political views or these views about the way the system worked and how that influences their work on a day-to-day basis. And because all of us exist in countries and political systems, so these systems will have an impact on your thinking as a professional or as an individual. So I think highlighting that sort of relationship was really well done in terms of how you explained your thinking there, Kiran. And yeah, go ahead.
So at that point, there was also my encounter with my now late mentor, Linesh Sheth. You've met Nanaji.
Oh, I have met
Abhishek. So
it's just a wonderful
Abhishek. So together we worked on something called School of Internal Literacy, which was kind of a formalization or a documentation that happened of his legacy of discoveries and work. A lot of inner work that he had done, and what it means is that human resource was defined by 6 movements. You had movement of your thoughts, movement of your emotions, movement of your body, movement of your breath, then movement of images. Images is a construct of thoughts and emotions. Like, when I say pizza, you will think of something. When I say Disneyland, you will think of something. That's imagery. And that's your imagination. Right? And like the last one is energy. Now, people understand emotion, but they are skeptical about energy. Emotion is nothing but energy in motion. Right?
That's
So these are like,
really powerful.
really beautiful, very simple and very profound thoughts produce and attract actions. Repeated thoughts produce and attract repeated actions. Thoughts produced with faith attract the most powerful actions.
Hmm.
So you can do your workout, you can do it with awareness, and you can do it with further evolved attached meaning.
Hmm.
And that's practice, like inner work practice, meditation, asanas, your physical and um, like it's a blend of the 6 movements that I mentioned,
Hmm.
all your practices in spirituality. And they're all different schools with different, like if you want to understand a school, understand their breathing technology and their breathing patterns.
So
If
what
they
was
are
it like for
chants,
soil, for instance? Like what were some of
so
the main?
soil was eclectic. Soil was eclectic. This is a download of 40 years of experience of a gentleman who was very kind and very simple, and a householder who would explain me his life's journey and his works. And he would be like, knowledge is important if not practiced. So
Mhm.
intellectual lethargy is the reason why I think many people, like, I'm actually sugarcoating. It's intellectual masturbation, right?
Hmm.
I think we're adults here. So that is without practice a waste,
Hmm.
because theoretically you can solve every problem, and every
True.
problem has been solved theoretically.
True.
Okay, maybe not all the scientific ones, but like for the most part, in on paper, that's what I mean by theory. On paper, I can make anything, but that does not manifest.
Hmm.
Manifestation is most key, because that is where the proof of the pudding is. You
Sure.
will know how real or how valid was that thought and your drive to manifest it.
Yeah.
And SFL gave me that opportunity and platform to manifest a group,
Hmm.
manifest an event, manifest things by coordinating. So I was like, coordination is perhaps the single most important skill that a human being can learn, because it helps you connect the dots.
Yep.
It helps you understand so many people's realities. And I'm a master coordinator today. Like, I just coordinate. Now that has another layer. It's called consulting. It has another layer. It's called facilitation. It's called another layer called community building. These are all intents.
Hmm.
There is only me and me as a person, right? So to manifest was something that my early fire, my early kindle of that fire happened in SFL.
Oh.
Spirituality gave me a why, kept me centered in myself.
Hmm.
And then student entrepreneurship was how we met, Abhishek.
Hmm.
So then student entrepreneurship happened separate from this, because like paisa to kamana hai. Kisi ka sunne to wala hu nahi. I want to earn money. I don't want to listen to anyone. I
Yep.
don't want a boss over my head. Or
Yeah.
even if I go into an environment, I don't want to be bound and restricted. Ki you be in your place. You are not in the hierarchy. You fall in line. I think
Hmm.
that was a fundamental problem of culture. That if I had an access to a good, positive culture environment, and they do exist,
Yeah.
I perhaps didn't access that. I
Hmm.
would have been maybe on a little less risk averse path,
Sure.
right? But
Yep.
for someone to explain the game, like, everyone's a player, man. Everyone's playing a game,
Yeah.
right? So which side of that table are you on, and what's the angle that you're working on?
And that's, I mean, that's such an important question to answer, right, Kiran? I think, a lot of us jump into opportunities without realizing the systems that those opportunities exist in. We just go with the flow, saying that we want to be part of this particular organization, but then what problem is this organization trying to solve? Is that something that you are connected with on a systems level, right? And that is something that you are not able to see when you are a lot younger, because you are just trying to access every opportunity that falls in your plate. But I feel that pruning that you did in the first 2 or 3 years, that pruning of understanding the identities that really matter to you, that understanding the kind of life you want to design, it was very conscious designing of a career and a life for you. And I think a lot of young people don't really take that time out from their, path to actually prune their thinking and their opinions about different subjects into possible action pathways. Now, after that 2 to 3 year period, I know you went along, and I think that's been a signifying characteristic of your life is doing, for profit, voluntary and profit related engagements in parallel. Because right after that, you jumped into an organization called Risevertise. I mean, you co-founded like that studio, which was a design studio, and you can tell us more about that. You were also associated with Lensplate. I think these were part of your
Honestly,
for-profit.
that was a phase where I think I was hungry for validation. I was hungry to do
Sure.
like by that time I had not started something in which my equity ownership and presence was. This was around 2015.
Mm,
Um, and I found an opportunity with someone whom I thought I connected with, and uh, that person came from an advertising marketing world, but I didn't do a risk analysis. I
mm,
didn't have an understanding of what I was doing. I mean, why the hell would I venture into marketing and design and communications? I mean, yes, I was spending a lot of time with people and I was fairly decent at communications, but I was not skilled from an advertising, marketing, content, tech, like arts. Like, I mean, this
yep.
whole thing was so new.
Yeah. Yeah.
But I thought that I could figure it out
You
by
give it a shot,
being
right?
by giving it a shot. And we did. And it was just built on everything wrong. The fundamentals, the starting, the genesis, the moment of time that it was. But it was also a smokescreen because I didn't know how to manifest what is now called Helm of Fate.
Sure.
I wanted to do something that was kind of birthed for this reality
Yeah.
in this time and not built on an old paradigm, because the problems that we face today
Yeah.
and we are going to face 10 years down the line that have their roots today, or 20 years down the line have their roots today, I want to be able to solve for that. I
Yeah.
want to have a horizon that is in my lifetime. By the time I'm in my 40s, I should be at the prime of my problem solving, right? Like I took that horizon. Not many people have that privilege
Hmm.
to be able to say that I don't have to go worry about a career. I don't have to worry about competition. I don't have to worry about, like, that privilege is afforded to me by my reality.
Sure.
And I do my fair bit
Yep.
to ensure that that privilege remains and that I continue to pursue this life. But it, before I thought what it was, just an abstract idea.
Hmm.
It can exist because I was like, just do one. And I also like had the urge of this friction you face in life between being, like I just want,
Hmm.
and I just want, right? This within organizations and what that looks like, within communities, what that looks like, self, what
Sure.
relation, what that looks like.
Hmm.
I right, and it can get it's a very deep insight,
Hmm.
like which we'll unpack maybe on a future date
Yeah.
with much more depth. But for today, there was that whole thing that initially I just wanted to be.
Yeah.
Then I started doing. Then I started being less with myself and I started doing more. And
Nice.
that's when Rhizotize came. So
Hmm.
basically, my inner work was now manifesting into my reality. Like it was woven into my lifestyle. Like instead of meditating 3 hours, I'm now being mindful. I'm checking in with myself. Also undergo a lot of different leadership interventions and learning interventions that I participated in, and a
Hmm.
wide array of communities. So it is like, okay, this is working, this is not working. Like taking a very experimental approach that there is nothing is like set and solved.
Sure.
Everything is an experiment. So everything is up for questions.
Hmm.
And anywhere that my curiosity is not welcome, I don't feel myself welcome.
Hmm.
So then to withdraw from those areas, to understand power dynamics in a
Yep.
room, on
Yep.
table, in a conversation, it's very vital to navigate and understand whether I can add value to this gallery or not. If
Yeah.
not, then why am I there?
But yeah, you were actually brave enough to actually explore the opportunity, even though there was that uncertainty, with regards to, actual value creation or your background. And I think a lot of us tie ourselves to brackets. We say that we have done this educationally, so we must do this professionally. But you were, I mean, I think you were open enough to say that there are a set of skills here that I'm interested in, and maybe I can add value if I learn more about this going ahead. And I feel like you were also engaging with that opportunity to, um, make this part of your repertoire in terms of your systems thinking, sort of, model, Kiran, because I feel like you, with that early experience with SFL and policy making and even with soil, you had slowly developed a foundational thinking approach that had these various parameters, and now you were really ready intellectually and professionally to jump into some sort of professional engagement. I know Rise Vertise manifested in that sort of space, but Helm of Fate was the real like intellectual sort of process and professional engagement that you really felt strongly about. And I know an early conversation we had over the phone where you were talking about this world, and I think you had just manifested it then, and now it's like such a beautiful organization. So like I want to be mindful of time as well. I know you have an engagement, so the last three questions I was thinking, we can look at Helm of Eight. And I was looking through the Helm of Eight website, and I know you work with organizations like Borderless Without Foundations,
World Foundation.
Borderless World Foundation.
Pulse, pulse. Timeline, I think we've covered till about 2015, 27.
True,
And present reality is a lot more succinct. So
it is. So
we can give ourselves about half an hour
you do
for
have half
this.
an hour, Kiran. Is that good?
We
Perfect. Also, Kiran, I think there's a little bit of like an audio lag. I just want to see if we can. Like, I'm able to hear you, but it's just a little scratchy. And while Kiran's, just fixing that, what I will be doing at the end of this chat is I will be linking Kiran's organization's website and websites to other talks and articles that Kiran has written or worked on in the show notes. So I'd highly recommend following this conversation up with an investigation of those resources. Hopefully, we'll get some books and films that have influenced Kiran's thinking in that sort of section as well. But yeah, Kiran, I think we have half an
yeah,
hour, and I want you to sort
yeah.
of paint that picture, because again, what we're
So
trying to do in addition to talking about your life is to create a visual sort of archive of your thinking right now, right, Kiran? So
sure.
go ahead.
So the time was about 2015, 2017, where basically Rise with Eyes and a year later Helm of Fate came about. And Helm of Fate started with looking at a physical space and trying to manifest it in a physical space. And that worked out a shit show for my first company. And the first two partners left, and I pretty much ran an agency by myself for a year before handing over the reins to someone else who ran it for a year, then seeing it dormant for a year, and then now basically it's defunct. So Rise is out of question.
Hmm.
Helm of Fate, coming down to it, the physical space, we did a community center approach. We did part incubation, part co-working, and part event community space. And we managed to manifest a beautiful experience. Like we did about 80 odd events there. We managed to do an event outside. We started to do convenings outside, and we realized that events burns us out. And I've been doing events for donkey years. And what I was most interested was the pivot that went to consulting.
Hmm.
So then from there, based on the social capital and the understanding, By this time, I had graduated from student entrepreneurship to general entrepreneurship. I joined Startup Grind
Mm,
after I left Students for Liberty in 2015. And I started focusing less on activism and more on entrepreneurship.
mm,
And even by general entrepreneurship, because social entrepreneurship as a word had not yet caught on.
mm,
And the mainstream was not ready, and it was very small silo. Today, you can hear impact entrepreneurship a little more profoundly than when you could 5 years back or
mm,
6 years back. So I've worked in the trenches there. I've worked in the back channels there. I've connected with many of these incubators, accelerators, and like community folks. And I just love, like, when you go to an event now, look for the organizer, look
I,
for the people who are
I
actually
I think
coordinating,
I
because
think we went together on a couple of those meetings too, early on. I think I
yeah,
remember you
yeah,
taking me to a lot of these meetings and events, and I always
yeah.
loved coming with you. So
So then you get the keys of the castle. You get to see what that reality is. And I show up and I was like, how can I help?
mm,
Like, I'm one of those, like, guests who'll actually help you serve the table, right? Like, it's that being host and being hospitable actually puts you in a position where you're able to get a sense of whoever's in the room without really going into the depth of like a conversation with each of them. Like, you can
mm,
choose to be a butterfly or you can choose to linger on that. So
yep.
it depends. And working a room and leveraging and all of these were skills which I picked up along the way. And there is just like you learn the craft of that.
Yeah.
And if you're like moderately also smart and charming, you'll be able to work your way in that.
Mm,
So 2017 was when Helm started, and then Helm's first pivot happened in 2018. And there was a lot of life crisis because that real estate cost a lot of money, and the marketing agency also. So it's basically setback after setback.
mm,
And I'm just like, no, I need to manifest this. What am I manifesting? Legacies. I have received in my funnel legacies and awareness. There's a word that you missed, Abhishek, over the years, which I've been exploring, which is ecosystem.
mm,
How things don't exist in isolation, but in correlation with the people, with the community, with the investment, finances, operations, knowledge, inspirations. Like, I mean, the bind that holds the whole together, right?
mm,
And the ecosystem that I got exposed to with SFL was Atlas Network and the think tank world. So, where
mm.
one organization is funding 570 plus public policy think tanks around the world.
Wow. I didn't know that.
The Liberty Movement had funding about $1 billion
Mm,
internationally, right? So that's an ecosystem. Then you have the non-profit ecosystems in India, you have startup ecosystems in India.
yeah.
It's about a group of interlinked, interrelated players,
True.
right,
True.
who coexist
Yep.
together.
Yeah.
That's the stakeholder analysis bit, which I learned in 2013, which has been extrapolated to understanding the practical realities. These are ecosystem, right?
Mm,
Now, within that logic, I started mapping so many different realities that everything you tell me now, I'll think about it from stakeholder point of view.
mm.
You tell me family, I will think about, like, you tell me something and I'll think about home, then like home is family, family and building is neighborhood, and neighborhood is in this city,
Your
and that
mind
city is
map
in
gets
this state.
activated right in your head.
That's so with Helm of Fate, when we started going into consulting, again, it started with events. Red Bull gave us a break. I launched myself in Bangalore with one property, and we convened an event in Bangalore. And some of these event adventures, like some of the conferences that we've done, etc. I mean, they're like, probably contributed to one or two of these lines and circles, one in the way,
Right.
because we just push ourselves so hard
Yes.
in that short span of time and make it manifest and happen, and then like you let it go.
It's
Led
so
to
hard
many
because I know
burnouts.
you did an event with the RA colony with regards to how things were, like the metro coming up there, and you organized like a community event there. But so many other, I mean, 80 events, like it's not really easy. But I feel like your passion for community building also, was sort of implemented in that sort of period. If not, and it's hard because it's not always remunerated. right? You are a professional making a living, and people think that this is just the service you can do for free. And I think Helm of Eight gave you an opportunity to channelize your community building with a more organizational mandate. Because yeah, sorry, I just
So
wanted to
the
put that in there.
so the name Helm, why Helm, and in fact, why my name also has Vibe Reddy to it today. These are all retrospect logics, right? But Helm, when it started, was like Helm is the steering apparatus. Like you are at that thing where that rudder, you can give yourself direction.
Mm,
That is what a helm is. What is the helm of the moment of your life, of work, of the relationship, of the conversation, of anything? All
mm,
your responsibilities is you at the helm, and whether you're ready for it or not,
mm,
because life is all of it at once,
mm,
right? Like you're at the helm of your life. So I wanted helm to be like that, like an emulation of that.
okay.
And I didn't want to be in one faction or another.
Okay.
I wanted it to be that if that moment requires me to talk to somebody, I will talk to somebody. If it
Mm,
requires me to learn a skill, I will learn a skill, or I will find someone with the skill.
mm,
If whatever that moment requires me, the helm of that moment requires me to do something, I'm not going to be like, "Oh, mere scope ke bahar hai."
mm,
It's outside my syllabus.
sure.
It's not in my question book log,
Yeah.
because it's reality.
Yep.
You're
Yep.
talking to an NGO. NGO is working with community. Community has needs. Do you have the potential to make it happen?
Yeah.
Or do you know someone who does?
Yeah.
And if it doesn't exist, then what's going to happen to the community? Like COVID, lakhs of people displaced,
Yeah.
no livelihood, beaten if they got out of their house,
Yeah.
oceans of them, faceless people who serve society, were walking, right? The system failed them.
Yep.
I wished to do something about it. I cried. I genuinely cried when I saw that.
Mm,
And I was like, what can I do? And I felt so disempowered. And I don't ever want to feel that way. If I truly want to say that I'm manifesting and I'm being aware, I want to be in a position where I can make a difference. And it's not just philanthropy, it's
yeah.
not just doing charity. They
Yeah.
don't want my damn handout. They want a job. They wanted to be allowed to do a job so that they could earn and then buy and live.
Yeah.
They don't want a handout. They want
Yeah.
their dignity, right? So in those contexts, Helm of Eight was meant to look at it from arts culture, holistic living, human resource development, design technology, which I learned because of the agency and
Mm,
that life.
mm,
Um, so arts culture, holistic living, human resource development, design technology, civic engagement, social enterprise, and civic action, I
mm,
think. Sorry, it's been a while since I've narrated all of them. But each of them has a nuance. That Helm would exist in every context of the matter, whether it is interdimensional, like within the organization, or extra dimensional, like with regards to how they relate with the world. When
mm,
it comes to the culture, the processes, the human resource development, the pedagogy, whatever you want to call it, like operations, accounts, project management, your branding, communications, the whole shebang. Because the problem could be a myriad of things, like development experiments. Ask any experimenter, they will tell you our theory of change, TOC as it's called, will include creating an environment.
mm,
In the environment, the actors are inspired and supported and empowered to take decisions for themselves and act on it themselves and transform their lives themselves,
mm.
instead of giving them a handout.
True. Yeah.
Helm of Eight was giving that environment, creating that proxy environment, helping you cross over that obstacle, maybe helping you understand best practices of that model from some alternate model.
Yeah.
What do you truly need? A good advisor at the helm. you need a good first man
Hmm.
to execute the work that you're talking about. And you need a sound captain who is not riddled by anxiety and will drive the ship into the rocks or like, break it or whatever.
Yeah. And
You
I
have
think I
to.
think Kiran, because the individual that is engaged with a particular organization is so involved in solving that problem that often the time and the opportunity to engage with other bodies, trying to address the same problem is not always available. And that's where I think it's important for some support in that sense at different stages, because there may be another organization in um, Hyderabad that is solving the same problem that an organization in Pune is solving in terms of the larger social impact, which is that triple bottom line of people, planet, and profit. So, what can this organization learn from what that organization is doing in these two contexts? And I think Helm of Fate became that body because there is so much conversation around creating this network in the startup space. And I've noticed that because I was in India for such a long time, and I think there was a gap in terms of those conversations happening in the social impact space. There were organizations doing it, but I know that your approach to creating and solving that gap is very innovative and unique in that sense. And I was looking through the list of organizations you have, and they're all working in varied spaces, but they're all also spread out across the country, right, Kiran? And that's really amazing that you were able to look at these 6 areas that you mentioned with Helm of Eight and be so flexible with the kind of services you provided to each organization, because based on their context, I feel the consulting advice you had to provide would be very different, right? And you'd have to
So
tap
there's
into.
there's there's another dimension here. The reason why I don't like to use the word management consultant or any of these loosely industry associated words is like it reminds me of Prakash Bhushan, who Prashant Kishore, sorry, who basically says, "I'm not a political analyst, but like the world or political strategist, but that's how the world has described the work that I do, so I use it, but I don't just do that,
Yeah,
right? Like it's for conversational sake that I say I'm a management consultant
sure.
because I'm interested in evolving that model.
Mm,
What the work that I like to do is somewhat like taking raw potential or taking some latent potential and then manifesting, then
mm,
activating it or
mm,
helping it achieve its potential, right? Like, and what that entails is transformative. It's
mm,
about imbibing, shifting culture, shifting behavior. Like, you can't even, like, someone who was driven by anger or rage is now operating on love and compassion. How are you going to measure it?
mm,
It's very difficult and also very detailed, very personal, because usually personal professional boundaries in the impact space are not very clear.
yeah,
And
yeah.
those that are typically doing it from an enterprise point of view, which is fine, but it's not going to have the deep empathy that requires you to say that I will not take profits in this model. I will give these profits to the community and I will empower them. How
Mm,
many people will say no to that? And why?
yeah.
Unless and until your value system is informed by a personal experience or a personal tragedy or like some kind of deep rooted uh, feeling or desire,
Hmm.
that passion that it evokes cannot be masked.
Sure. Yep.
But you can have the passion but not the skill set.
Yeah.
You can have the passion but not the manifestation associated with it. That's
True.
where I look for the passion.
Yep.
The essence, the root essence is the drive,
Got it.
and your willingness to do whatever it takes to make that model succeed
Yep.
ethically, of course, but without compromising on your values and principles, but somewhere to shift the 1 degree change on a periodic basis to actually come towards the yardstick and the measure and the excellence.
Sure. Yep.
And I've started learning to do it more effectively. Different people approach and respond with different styles
Mm,
and language, culture, so much, so diverse. Like
yeah.
different people understand differently. Like if I were having the same conversation in Hindi, qualitatively, Abhishek, ये बहुत ही अलग बात है.
Yeah.
Because English is a very intellectual language for me. It's how my brain thinks about things.
Sure.
But if you ask me in the realm of feelings, I'm Hindi. When I speak in Hindi, my emotions are very clear to me when I speak in Hindi. So this bridge also helps me talk to grass and work with the community. But anyways, moving past where
because
Helm is today.
I'd love to know about one or two organizations that you worked with and how you use the Helm of Fate model to support their work on the ground, Kiran, because that will be really interesting for other people that want to engage with Helm of Fate at a professional level that are watching this video. Like that example would be beneficial to them in that sense.
So Helm's succinct definition, which is going to come out over the next 2 to 3 months as we are revamping our communications, and we are actually now at a point where we are coming out of stealth into that space where we can demonstrate what we are talking about, right? Like having to show our work. Like we've shown the talk, now we have to show the work. So we are an all-in-one advisory for change makers. All-in-one advisory for change makers. So advisory, it entails that we will provide advisory support and not execution support.
Got it.
But the advice we provide will be informing the execution. Because many organizations don't have second-tier leadership, don't have processes and systems that kind of are a little more modern, a little more well-resourced, because understand the impact domain and social entrepreneurship, and many of these organizations are not well-equipped, are not well-staffed. There are people who come from career prospects, and there are people who do it from a lifetime employee. And there's always a divide.
True.
People are crossing over because they either want to build up a master's, build up a CV to go for masters, or like there is some kind of like, break. I just want to take a break. And like there's no seriousness. And when they come, there are some professional agency setups, there are professional organizations in the impact domain. Love them. They do great work, but they're very top elitist. You'll find that also there. The ones who work at the grassroots are usually where the work is the most satisfying, most meaningful, but things move informally. Things move slowly there. True. So you have to taste all the different realities, because you need corporate funding, which comes from the top. You need government funding, which comes from the lobby. You need to write a grant, which is coming from a foundation or one of these sources. And then you need to design a project with an implementation partner who's at the grassroots, to work with a community which is at the grassroots. So you have to design this whole piece every single time.
True.
A social enterprise model. This is a development approach. This is a development pipeline. There is a whole model on the social enterprise front where you've got a community of producers from the grassroots. You take their product, you value add, you help them value add, then you sell it in market under a brand. That's a social enterprise model. Isme paisa bana. Wo paise ke saath, there is also another NGO sister concern that is kind of working with this group and supporting them, helping them build their capacity, helping them with education, with health, with access to finance, with access to doing their business better, kind of like influencing them and supporting them. This whole activity in which this production is happening at a village level. The village falls under something called Gram Panchayat. A Gram Panchayat is a governance body which has been disempowered. Like in the sense, it has not realized its power. Local governance has not manifested. I mean, by design, by ignorance, by let's not attribute, but let's just say that it is not yet manifested its potential. So here's an organization called a Node Governance Lab, which will work with this uh, governance structure of Gram Panchayat, support the Gram Panchayat leaders to make better decisions. Those decisions will be further absorbed and carried by the villagers, supported by the NGOs. This whole project financed by the CSR. This is the design of it.
Nice.
Their relationship dynamics, the project management of it, the measurement and the evaluation and the efficacy of it. One is a charity or like capacity building development model. The other is a local enterprise model, which is that you build the capacity so that they can do the enterprise. And once they do the enterprise and earn resources, you can then further add further capacity. And then basically this is a cycle.
Nice.
That continues.
And that's where Helm of Fate comes into play, right? I assume.
So we've identified these designs. We've apprenticed with an organization called Chaya. In fact, I'm at my promoter's home right now in Pune. And her name is Simantini Coat, and she runs an organization called Chaya LLP. So we work in very close capacities. Like even the word partner and collaborator doesn't go far enough. Because I'm truly apprenticing with her, and the legacy of their work is spreading over 40 years. The average age in her organization is 35 years of experience. 35 years of experience.
Not, oh, wow.
Of experience. Right? So they're a very senior legacy organization. So working in that kind of orchestration, right? You can't buy relationships in that sense.
True.
That's it.
Yeah.
The relationships that, like, a very powerful word is the arc of time.
Yeah.
Right. The senior generation that has seen the arc of time, I know for a fact now, people who are above like 60s and above are usually the ones that I get along with. Now, probably people in their 70s are the ones that I get along with, skipping my parent generation. Right. And this like maybe there is a generation after us, the Gen Zs, who might not get along with me. Yeah. But I'd probably do better with Gen Unlimited or whatever the hell comes after Gen Z, right? There is a generation correlation, which, I mean, these are just observations, right?
Maybe
like I said,
maybe
I'm
the
experimental headspace.
Yeah, maybe the value systems match in some sort of unconscious way, right? In this intergenerational way. And I think that also comes into that thing you said about, understanding stakeholder values and developing, individual partnerships that can translate into, professional opportunities. And I think, yeah, understanding what values are most important to you, I think comes down to actually can influence the work you do on a day-to-day basis. But you very succinctly actually explained that sort of development model, Kiran. I want to be mindful of time. I know you have to, go. You have about 5 minutes, 5 to 10 minutes more, Kiran.
Yeah, we do.
And I think this conversation can actually go on for, quite some time, because I think Kiran's just mentioned one organization's work, but there are more than 10 or so organizations that he works with in Helm of Fate. And it's a team, not just Kiran. He's got...
It's more.
Yeah.
It's more than 10.
What is the number at now, Kiran?
Formally and informally, right? Like, I mean, there are relations that we've nurtured over the course of time.
Yeah.
The moat that we have, honestly, why people cannot replicate us in the same way are the relationships.
True.
Is the awareness and the understanding.
Yeah.
Of values of these people and the trust with these people.
Yeah.
So there are maybe over 25, 30 partners that we have, out of which we are actively working with maybe 4 commercially.
Okay. Got it.
Another further 10 or 12 of them are supported on a periodic basis. It can be once a week. Yeah. It can be once a fortnight, once a month, once in a quarter, but not less than a quarter. Like within a 3-month period, I will always ring all my partners and just chat with them, see where they are.
But I'm sure you're on a lot of Zoom calls and virtual meetings now, right? I think you
Phone.
just on the phone
Just
now.
pick up the phone and just call. Yeah.
Yeah,
I mean, because a lot of these people are lifetime committed champions of the
yeah,
work that they do.
true.
And like I was asking my mom recently, I was like, Mom, tell me why. Why is this happening? I look left and there is this person with this legacy and this work. I look right and there is this person with this work. Someone who's doing that work in Kashmir, someone who's doing this work. How are they coming to me? How am I going to them? What is happening now? The reality itself is providing new additions to itself. Like I'm just holding this space. I'm just like a gardener, right? I'm not the plant growing. I'm the gardener,
Yep.
right?
And I think
So
that's a positive note to, maybe transition into this final question, Kiran. I'm so sorry to hold you there, but I want to make sure
no
we get
problem.
these last thoughts in about, like, I mean, we've spoken about your professional, your educational journey in a small way, because I think there's always so much more that we can't cover in such a small conversation. But what were some books and films that impacted you along the way, that that really
Hmm.
influenced your thinking? Because I know you read a lot, and you
This would be fun. I think someone would probably profile me as ultra radical, needs to be eliminated if
you
I
can
say
no
V for
you can
Vendetta.
again you can choose to talk about books that you think would, but then I would want to know where you're thinking, or what is it
Right.
influenced by.
So, books wise, I think the works of Edward de Bono,
Hmm.
some of his early works like Lateral Thinking, was really, really powerful.
And he's the person that made the
Um,
mind maps. Is that him? No, he's the thinking hats person, right?
but also the person whom I learned mind mapping from. I think humanity's been doing like you're in a cave, you're on the wall, you're drawing things, you're also mind mapping there, right?
True,
Like you're
true. It's
looking
not
at
just
your
that
reality.
person. Yeah,
General Sun Tzu was like designing his army tactics. Like obviously that's also mind mapping that
true,
reality, right?
true.
So
Yeah,
I think that's the thing. No one owns an imagination,
true.
but these tools and IPs and all of these, I think, are more self-validation grandeurs. It's great to proliferate, maybe to some extent, but anyways, Edward de Bono was one. Jiddu Krishnamurti, Freedom from the Known, is a
Hmm.
book that was so beautiful because Jiddu Krishna, like, because I'm dealing with such powerful thought schools and logics, right? How do you center yourself? How do you bring yourself back to center? How do you like, like you go to a fragrance store, you smell some fragrances, then your nostrils are compromised, so you need to smell the coffee to kind of open up your nostrils again and then come back. So Jiddu Krishnamurti is the coffee
Hmm. Okay,
who
so
helps you appreciate the fragrances better, right?
hmm.
So JK's book Freedom from the Known is extremely powerful.
Okay,
Then Viktor Frankl, Man in Search for Meaning.
nice. That's a great book. Yeah, I read that.
Yeah, it's not just that. I mean, the logotherapy and the works of meaning of life and purpose. Like, I think I'm living a purposeful life,
Hmm.
at least as per my view. I can speak for my truth. But the book has the foundations of that.
Nice.
And when you go further into logotherapy and the works of Viktor Frankl, you will find like these triads of how three things are connected together, which is like in spirituality, I learned that it was the breath, the body, and the mind that are
Hmm.
connected. If you work on any one of them, you can influence the other. On another front, in Viktor Frankl, the boredom triad, right? You should definitely look that up. It basically talks about how, because of boredom, addiction, depression, and aggression,
Hmm.
addiction, depression, and aggression all happen because of boredom.
Hmm. Did he mention that in that book as well, in Man's Search for
I
Meaning?
think it was in the next one. I think it was the
Okay.
next one. So I
Okay.
mean,
Yeah.
that's like it's. I'm giving these as like a directional things. Like go down a rabbit hole
Yeah.
till you reach the different thought worlds of these
Yeah,
guys.
I think one book
Right?
is often not enough. What about films, Kiran? Documentaries, films?
Films. Um, I think there are some of those more, I guess, like Nayak was one when I saw very young, was
Is this
something that
the
really
Anil Kapoor
inspired me.
film
Anil Kapoor,
where the
correct.
citizen gets to become like a leader for
Yeah.
a day, right? Yeah.
And then I think Nasiruddin, some of his art films, there was this really um, powerful one, which was around the Gandhi riots, sorry, Godhra riots
Hmm.
in Gandhinagar. Um, I forget its name right now.
Okay, so that's an
Really made,
artist.
really, yeah, yeah. Artist in the sense like it was based around the communal violence that happened
Sure.
in Gandhinagar and what societies went through or what people went through and like how humans turned into animals
Hmm.
and how a goat became Muslim and how like today a cow has become Hindu. Right?
Hmm.
Like we've given religion to animals,
Yep.
abomination to nature, right?
So you can actually
So
send me a link and I can put that in the chat, Kiran. Like even if there are
sure.
other like artists or thinkers that have influenced your thinking over the years, you can even share maybe a word or two about them. It doesn't have to be in the textual or video form. It could be
But
visual art.
one of the bigger influences is actually music.
Hmm.
Like because I think the best music produces the most profound silence in you.
Hmm. It's beautifully put. Yeah.
And that to be able to hold you in both the sound and the absence of sound, and what it does to your neural pathways. Like, I mean, if you're feeling emotionally overwhelmed, and like if you were able to change your mood lighting, put on some candles, put on some jazz, uh, put some scented aroma sticks around, you can you can change your reality. Like you
Yeah.
might just be having resonant energy coming from somewhere.
Yeah.
So, I mean, it's a blend now today, like movies, there are so many. The Network, which talks about thought control back in 50s, 60s or 70s. And that powerful speech in that boardroom to this guy, and his life is just like blown. Where, like, just how society today is controlled.
Yep.
I think a lot of work around that. I,
Yeah.
it, and Matrix, man, 100%.
That's obviously a
Matrix.
classic. But Kiran, I
Yeah.
think it's a good time to wrap this up because I know you have to head out now. But thank you, Kiran. Thank you so much for making time for this. Again, for the viewers listening in and watching this video, I highly recommend looking up the website, following Kiran on social media to understand his work, or maybe even just reaching out to him if you are an organization. That is in the social impact space that would like to collaborate and work with Helm of Fate, because I really think there is a lot of value that Kiran and his team can bring to your organization. And for the people tuning in, stay tuned for more such conversations in the coming weeks, and hopefully we have another conversation like this for you in the coming weeks. And until then,
Like, comment, subscribe. Like, comment, subscribe. Like, comment,
which
subscribe.
I hope will happen too. So thanks, Kiran. Thank you so
Yeah.
much.
Thanks, Abhishek. Look
Um,
forward.
Perfect.